With Chainsaw Man Chapter 171, we open up where the last one left off, and Fujimoto keeps his foot all the way on the gas with this one by showing us one of the most horrified expressions that Denji has ever had in the history of this entire manga, and with as much pain as Chainsaw Man Part 1 put him through, that is saying a lot. This is the mark of a really good artist, being able to tell a whole story without having any text on the page because of the weight of the scene that we're seeing unfold, and the choice to have the black background as Denji is looking at Nayuta's head on that sushi dish. It is a chef's kiss for this entire moment. For Denji, the last thing that he was holding on to, his last glimmer of hope that he would have that kept him bound to this world as a human, it was now ripped away from him, and the despair in his face, it is gut-wrenching, especially when you realize a few chapters ago when he's getting the hand job and we see Yoru and she's getting her memories back, Mitaka's getting her memories back up, them kissing Denji, those literally might have been Nayuta's last moments. This is even more heartbreaking when you realize that this is just continuing with the long list of heartbreaks of Denji's character. Just how in part 1 he lost Himeno right when they started bonding, he lost Aki and Power, people who he viewed as family, and then he suffered the betrayal at the hands of Makima, losing so much directly because of her, and losing the image of what he thought Makima was inside of his head. And throughout part 2, we've seen how much he cares for Nayuta, and we see him breaking down in this moment, watching his little sister's corpseless head on the sushi bar. You could even argue, due to the fact that he's raising her, she might as well have been his daughter. And you have Barm saying, yeah, this just had to be done. Kind of cruel, isn't it? And in this very moment, as Barm is saying all that so nonchalantly, it is breaking Denji because he is still not processed his grief from the end of Chainsaw Man Part 1. Now he's having to add another layer, and you see the wheels starting to turn in the wrong direction because he has finally reached his breaking point. Nayuta was the last reason that he had to live, and he is now searching for her desperately after their home was burned down, their pets were killed. Miaoi, the pet who he was protecting for Power, that was dead, and now life has rewarded him with this tragedy. This easily ranks at the top of the list for everything that Denji's gone through. Having Denji kill Aki, that is one thing. They grew close, but they had their issues at the start of the series. Having Denji's body under Makima's control and betray him by having him blow Power to bits on his birthday, that's as savage as it gets. Power was holding his birthday cake, for God's sakes, but this takes it to a whole nother level. Nayuta is someone who we saw the guy was being used as a human chair to get money for and doing all these types of things in order to make sure that she had the best possible chance for success because he believed she had a bright future. He wanted to put her through school, and now her head is on a sushi dish platter. And it's bad when even Katana Man, someone who absolutely hates Denji, is looking at this scene and he is bothered by what it is that he's seeing. Denji is having his soul ripped out of his body, unable to say anything, while everyone else is shown visibly reacting or they're verbally reacting, and it just goes to show us that this is why the use of a death of a child in literature is as powerful as it is when it is done right. Keyword being when it was done right, which in this instance it definitely was. Tomorrow it isn't promised, but with kids, you never stop to think that someone so young and happy is running out of their time and that their dreams won't ever be fulfilled, which is why it works, especially when it's to show a character like Barm who has no morality, or at the very least very little moral compass. It is a shock to the system to show the cruelty of how humanity operates, the cruelty of world itself. And Denji's slow reaction to rage, it is being built up like a perfect crescendo right here. So when he finally snaps, the guy, he just goes right from Barm's neck, and the moment we see his insides begin to spill out, you know exactly what's happening. So now you're reading everything faster because there's a sense of foreboding. The true Chainsaw Man, Black Chainsaw Man, is about to take over, and it's consistent with what we've been told in the past. When Denji has truly hit rock bottom and is close to giving up on his will to live and is beyond emotionally shattered, Pochita makes his presence known. However, Fujimoto wisely doesn't go right for the transformation, but instead takes the time to give us that visibly satisfying moment where Denji isn't just crushing Barm's neck, but he's outright ripping his head off. And this is where things get very, very interesting. For whatever reason, the English version of the chapter shows us a split panel of Mitaka looking on one panel, and then you see Yoru on the other. And at first I thought, okay, wow, so this means that Yoru saw this and she got all giddy and so she took over the body. But when you look over on the Japanese version of the chapter, it's actually quite different. So in the Japanese version, we see Denji pulling the ripcord as he's fully giving into his transformation, which lines up with his insides being wrapped around his neck as he's ripping Barm's head off with way more force than we would normally see Denji do in his base. Not really sure why they decided to take this part out, showing the ripcord being ripped out, but we'll probably get the answer when the collection of chapters for this volume are published, which nonetheless is still a cool Easter egg. You'll be able to tell your friends later on, like, hey, like, you saw this, but in the manga it was like this. So it's also a moment where we see Black Chainsaw Man fully transform, and as Pochita is now taking in the scene, Public Safety Division 1, Division 2, Division 5, they're all in the scene. They're ready to commence operation to battle Chainsaw Man, and this introduction coming right on the heels of Denji snapping and Nayuta's death. If it feels pretty short, it's because it's intentional. Fujimoto right now, he is speeding through the ending of the chapter. It's meant to make you guide through to the moment where Denji snapped. Fujimoto is using these guys to set the stage for what's about to happen, the unleashing of Pochita as Chainsaw Man. We don't even get the names of this collection of public safety members who are gathered here, and we're seeing them all get the promise of they're gonna drink so much booze and sushi whenever they get done, and unbeknownst to them, as they're getting ready to head out, they've officially become the hunted, and they don't even realize it. Standing in the background like the apex predator that he is, Pochita, the Black Chainsaw Man, appears ready to pounce in. This is about to be a slaughter fest. This chapter, it is a bittersweet reveal of the transformation, because on one hand, it's such an epic transformation, and this Black Chainsaw Man is pretty much universally considered one of the most iconic designs of the series, and yet at the same time, we only truly see this form when Denji has suffered so much, and it makes you go back through all those moments we had with Denji and Nayuta prior to this and realize everything that we're seeing, Denji's hopes and dreams and the seriousness that he was taking towards raising her to be something of a better version of Makima, that was not all done to show that someone like Makima, who had they been raised in a different light, could have turned out better, but instead it was layered on super thick with the intention to shatter Denji once again. Just as how when you go read part 1 of Chainsaw Man and you see those bonds with Aki and Power and Makima, they were all being set up intentionally by Makima, ironically, in order to break Denji, which is why this one hurts so much as a reader. But our signs, they were there based on how desperate Denji was to find Nayuta, and the way that he was just saying a few chapters ago that this was such a horrible day, and he kept saying he couldn't go back to a normal life. And this is what happens when you have a character who appears to have hit an emotional rock bottom, and before you show them that they still aren't done falling, you rip their heart out. And right now, Denji is in a position where when this is all over, he's gonna have to do the one thing he never did after the deaths of Aki and Power, which is face even more trauma, especially if something happens to Asa Mitaka. And the craziest thing is that if you're familiar with Fujimoto's other works, then the suffering of Denji, it clearly is not over. While that's gonna be it for this Chainsaw Man chapter review, do not hesitate to click on this playlist to the left for more Chainsaw Man content, and over here on the right, we have another Anime Explained video for you guys to check out.